If there is one area in life that I do not feel adequate in discussing, it is the role of being a husband. After over 20 years, I will admit this is not an area I believe experience equates to mastery. In fact, the more time progresses, it appears the less I know. Or maybe to better explain, not necessarily the less I know, rather how much more I need to learn. If that makes sense. The American culture of the 21st century does no justice in this topic, not in general, not in specifics. And even when we segment down to Christian ideologies and Christian cultural nuances, we are still left with a gigantic mess. Where I mentioned in Godly Dad Stuff, being a father is the greatest role a man can ever be given, I want to state up front my opinion on being a husband is that it is the most humbling role a man can ever be given. This is a topic like Godly Dad Stuff that does need its own branch of videos, as the depth of this topic cannot be underestimated. Yet where I believe Godly Dad Stuff topics are a mountain in which we are destined to climb as men, Godly Husband Stuff will be a topic that requires us to dig deeper than we ever have within ourselves to truly understand our role as husbands. Therefore, as with Godly Dad Stuff, I clearly want to demonstrate up front that this is not a topic I, in any stretch of the imagination, would claim to be an expert on, and will simply be discussing aspects of marriage and being a husband with a mindset of seeking understanding and giving a perspective that has been refined through the years. Hey guys, welcome to Godly Husband Stuff, a segment of Godly Guy Stuff, which is a group for guys here to connect and collaborate on how we as men can have a stronger impact on our lives and, of course, the lives of those who depend on us. Now, if you are a guy who struggles through life like me, wondering how to create godly paths as a husband, make sure you subscribe to be part of a place that produces content for an iron sharpens iron environment. That's what it's all about. Now, I also have a locals community for up-and-coming topics, as we continue conversations, accountability for myself, and for those who wish to dig deeper in life with me together. Now, marriage is such a large minefield of topics for today's Christian guy, and it can almost guarantee to be damaging to you in some way as you traverse through the life of a husband. I don't believe I really need to give any type of expectation on what a young man sees in the fruits of marriage, but the reality of these fruits and the depth of their benefits are in no way demonstrated in today's culture. Now, whereas with Godly Dad Stuff, the benefits come to mind pretty easily to see the role of a father in today's culture as it's still understood in, I guess, some type of basic principles. But the role of a husband, that is something that has become almost a myth, or at least an enigma to most Americans. I believe many aspects of husbandry have been lost generations ago in our society, and the roles we see men take on today, they have little to nothing in relation to what a husband is meant to be. The husband of the 21st century. I feel like I cannot state it enough how difficult of a topic this is for me and to really wrap my head around. Because I grew up with the understanding of a silent giant being the norm for men. The concept of a husband was depicted as a strong, a diligent, resourceful, and dependable man. But in today's society, it's almost completely opposite. Today, husbands are seen as weak, undependable, inept. We've been deemed a second class behind womankind, but only because we are being punished for holding the title of first class as far as our country's history is determined. Of course, this entire concept of first and second class has been a volatile issue for over 100 years or more in America, and it has grown into a wildfire of viewpoints over the last 40 years, where women have raised themselves to be viewed as equal in society. This has had a negative depiction of who the husband is in the role of marriage, in the role of the home, in the role of the family. Husbands have, for generations, been completely eradicated in some subcultures of the American streets and neighborhoods. I personally remember looking fondly upon the role of the strong, large grandmothers who raised their grandchildren because the fathers years ago had abandoned them and were left to the women to raise. And, in the past 30 years, I've looked back on what has happened to husbands with shock and dismay because we have been deemed a threat in many aspects to this new social structure. We're no longer a useful entity, and if we are to have a place in society, it is only to be labeled dim-witted and incompetent, and this holds grounds for mockery. I really would love to actually hear some additional comments from you guys on this topic, from other Christian godly husbands. Do you feel the same? Do you believe that our society has all but rejected you? Or maybe even mankind in general? Marriage and the godly guy. Christian husbands need to return to a level of leadership that has abandoned our society. Now, I might be more critical than I have been in other videos, but that has to do with the fact that this topic has a lot more ground to cover than generalities of godly guys and fathers. I believe there is no greater area of work required for the godly man than in husbandry. With godly dad stuff, we are planting seeds for the future generation. With godly husband stuff, in many respects, we are repairing roads that have been destroyed by previous generations. We're also having to destroy poor foundations that have been laid by our own hands. And we're having to shield ourselves, our wives, and our families from the arrows of an ever-present attack from our culture and, sadly, even our churches. Make no mistake, this is the area where the fight is the most intense. This is where being Christ-like will be the most difficult to accept. Now, most, if not all of us, have read the verses out of Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 30. Wives, be subject to your own husbands as the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So husbands ought also to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body. For generations, verses 22 through 24 have been used by men, in the church even, to show where women should be placed. Yet today, this pendulum has swung in a mighty fashion, with women now demanding verses 25 through 30 to be loved and taken care of without any respect towards men. In many aspects, it also almost appears as if we are at the same crescendo of a song, the height of madness, where men and women are destroying one another for the sake of authority and self-ruling. This bitter rivalry was developed way back in Genesis with the fall of man in Genesis chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. To the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you will bring forth children, yet your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Then to Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and have eaten from the tree about which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. Where men and women were initially on equal placement under God, now when it comes to marriage with the addition of sin, that placement seems to have changed. Because before marriage, men and women were equal or seen as individuals, Once in marriage, due to sin, this dynamic was altered. Verse 16 demonstrates the change in the dynamic. The care and responsibility for the woman's earthly life, along with the rest of the family in marriage, is placed on the shoulders of the man, and he must now toil for both of them with manual labor and sweat upon a cursed ground until they both reach a mortal ending to their physical bodies. And a spiritual death is also placed on everyone, now having to be separated from God. In many respects, the fall of man is truly horrific in its display that alters God's divine concept in a cruel fashion. But isn't that what sin is supposed to do? Destroy and rot? Now women and men are fighting for control over this earthly realm. Most of history has demonstrated men using this rule over women as a harsh subjugation on women and making them a second-class human, which was never the concept. Yet there are instances, such as today's American culture, where women are now demanding the seat of power, wielding this power as the men have done. The consequences of these actions, they have no good qualities, none being revealed, and as currently both men and women are now officially outside of their designated, God-given roles. So, marriage as a godly concept, in essence, has been consumed. We need to start our conversations from here on out with this in mind. Our initial and main goal for godly husband stuff is this: to rebuild godly foundations. Only then can we develop God-honoring homes. Wrap up. This would probably be a good time for me to apologize, as this topic is not a lighthearted storyline. Now, for upcoming topics, I will make a concerted effort in future videos for godly husband stuff to have hopefully a more pleasant and engaging aspect to the topics. But I did want to begin with a sense of urgency and a sobering understanding that the topic at hand is going to be difficult. But as with everything within the godly Christian lifestyle, men, we need to understand our focus will be on Christ. And any and all obstacles that come in our way, they'll be His problem, not ours. It has to be this way, or else failure will be the only option. Now it's your turn. All right, what did I miss today? Have I made the concept of marriage too dark? Am I wrong in stating that we have a massive battle in front of us with this topic? There are many wonderful aspects to marriage, I admit, and they will have their time and place for the future. And I readily admit my perspective is skewed, but many aspects of our culture do that. So if I have mistakenly done something or said anything wrong in this video, or any of my videos for that matter, let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening through yet another entire video, and please definitely follow me or subscribe to the Godly Guy Stuff group here on Gab. Gab is the launching headquarters of the content that is produced for Godly Guy Stuff, Godly Dad Stuff, Godly Husband Stuff. So if you're watching this on some other platform, you're missing a lot more content. There's also a Godly Guy Stuff Locals community, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, where I post content for upcoming videos. You can find even more videos, sneak peeks, some deeper personal connections, accountability for me, and of course future casting on upcoming ideas. So if you want to see what I am working on currently with the group, head on over to Gab. For upcoming topics, head on over to Locals. Links are in the descriptions, and of course, I look forward to having and continuing this conversation. Thanks.